Have you ever walked through a graveyard that looks like a palace? Imagine standing in the middle of a desert. The sun is beating down, turning the sand into gold. And rising out of this barren landscape are mountains. But they aren't just mountains, they are canvases. Carved into the solid rock faces are facades so intricate, so massive, and so beautiful, they make modern skyscrapers look like glass boxes. We are talking about columns that soar 50 feet high, delicate geometric patterns etched into stone that is harder than steel, and doorways. Huge, imposing doorways that lead into cool, dark chambers. This is Al-Hijr, known today as Madain Salih. It stands in silence in the Arabian Peninsula. If you visit today, you will feel a chill that has nothing to do with the temperature. It is a ghost town of epic proportions. You look at these structures, masterpieces of engineering, and you think, who lived here? Where are the kings who commissioned these? Where are the children who played in the shadows of these pillars? They are gone, vanished, wiped off the face of the earth, leaving their homes behind as a warning. This isn't just a story about ancient history. This is a story about human nature. It's about a civilization that achieved the impossible, a people who believed they were too big to fail, and the terrifying moment when they realized they were wrong. This is the story of the Thamud, the builders of the mountains, the challengers of God, and it all ends with a sound so loud it stopped their hearts. Stay with me. We are going back thousands of years to a time when giants walked the earth and a simple she-camel became the tipping point for an entire nation. To understand the fall, we have to understand the rise. Who were the Thamud? History tells us they were the successors to the people of Ad. Now, Ad was a superpower in their own right, giants of men who were destroyed because of their arrogance. You would think the Thamud, looking at the ruins of their predecessors, would take notes. You'd think they'd say, okay, let's stay humble. But human beings have short memories. The Thamud settled in a valley that was a geological paradise. While the rest of the world struggled for water, the Thamud had natural springs. They had fertile soil. They had livestock that multiplied by the season. They were rich beyond measure. But their real pride? It was their engineering. The Thamud didn't want to build homes that would rot or burn. They wanted immortality. They looked at the rugged mountains surrounding their valley and said, "We will live in there." Imagine the skill required. They didn't have dynamite. They didn't have laser cutters. They had chisels, hammers, and an arrogance that fueled their muscles. They carved palaces out of monolithic rock. This wasn't just shelter, this was a statement. A statement that said, nature cannot hurt us. Time cannot touch us. We are the masters of this earth. Their society flourished. They had art, culture, and a military might that made their neighbors tremble. The elite lived in these cool, rock-cut mansions, insulated from the heat, while the poor worked the plains. They felt untouchable. And when you feel untouchable, you stop looking up. You stop being grateful. The Thamud began to worship idols, statues they carved with their own hands. They attributed their success to the stone, to the stars, to themselves. Corruption took root. The strong devoured the weak. Justice became a commodity you could buy. They looked at their stone fortresses and thought, even if the sky falls, these mountains will hold it up. They were about to find out how fragile stone really is. In every society that loses its way, there is usually a voice calling them back. For the Thamud, that voice belonged to a man named Salih. Salih wasn't an outsider. He wasn't a stranger who wandered in from the desert. He was one of them. He was born into their nobility. Before he became a prophet, the Thamud loved him. He was intelligent, wise, charismatic. The elders looked at young Salih and thought, "This man, he will be our future leader." But then Salih changed, or rather, he saw the truth. He began to preach. He stood in the town squares, in the shadow of their magnificent carvings, and delivered a message that shattered their status quo. "O my people," he would say, "worship Allah. You have no deity other than Him. He brought you forth from the earth and settled you in it. So ask forgiveness of Him and turn to Him in repentance." He didn't ask for money. He didn't ask for a crown. He asked them to be humble. He asked them to stop oppressing the poor and to stop worshipping stones that couldn't speak. The reaction? It wasn't violence, at least not at first. It was confusion. Then mockery. The elites were insulted. They said, "O Salih, you were among us as a man of promise before this. Do you forbid us to worship what our fathers worshipped?" They called him bewitched. They called him a lunatic. They started a smear campaign. "Don't listen to Salih," they'd whisper. "He's jealous of our wealth. He wants power for himself." But Salih was persistent. He spoke with love, not anger. He reminded them of the people of Ad. "Look at history," he warned. "Don't repeat the cycle." But the Thamud were drunk on their own power. They looked at their carved mountains and laughed. "Who can destroy us?" they asked. And then the debate escalated. They decided to corner him. They decided to expose him as a fraud once and for all. The scene is set. It's a festival day. The leaders of the Thamud are gathered in their finery, surrounded by their idols. Salih approaches them, pleading his case one more time. The leaders look at each other with a smirk. They point to a massive, singular rock on the outskirts of the city, a rock known as Al-Katiba. It is solitary, immense, and hard as diamond. One of the chiefs steps forward. "Salih," he says, voice dripping with sarcasm, "if you are truly a messenger of God, prove it. See that rock? We want you to bring a living creature out of it. But not just any creature. They make the list of demands impossible. It must be a she-camel. It must be huge. It must be 10 months pregnant. It must be red and hairy. And it must emerge right now." They crossed their arms and smiled. They had him. It was physically, biologically, and logically impossible. Stone cannot give birth to flesh. Salih looked at the rock. Then he looked at his people. He asked them, "If I bring you this sign, will you believe? Will you stop your corruption?" "Yes," they chorused. "Show us this, and we will follow you." Salih separated himself from the crowd. He stood before his Lord, raised his hands, and prayed. He didn't pray for magic. He prayed for guidance. He prayed for a miracle that would save their souls. The massive rock Al-Katiba began to tremble. A fissure appeared down the center, glowing with heat. And then, before the terrified eyes of the Thamud, the rock split open. And from the cold, dead stone, life emerged. A colossal she-camel, exactly as described, stepped out. She shook the dust from her fur, let out a loud bellow that echoed through the valley, and she was pregnant. It was a manifestation of the impossible, a miracle so clear, so undeniable, that it should have brought every man, woman, and child to their knees. But pride is a dangerous drug. Some people, mostly the poor and the young, immediately cried out, We believe in the God of Salih." But the leaders, the 9 chiefs, they stared in shock, but their hearts hardened. Instead of saying, "This is a miracle," they said, "This is sorcery, powerful magic." They moved the goalposts, they refused to submit. The camel was here, she was real, she was huge, and she was a problem. Prophet Salih gave them a divine command. "This is God's she-camel," he told them. "Let her eat in God's land. Do not harm her, or a near punishment will seize you." He established a rule. The valley had one main source of water, a large well. Salih said, "One day the water is for the camel. She will drink it all. On that day you drink her milk, which she will provide in abundance. On the next day the water is for you and your livestock." Think about that. A massive creature that drinks an entire well dry in one day. But in exchange, she gave enough milk for thousands of people. For a while, this uneasy truce held. The camel roamed the streets. She grazed by their mountain palaces. When she walked, other animals moved out of the way. She was a living, breathing billboard for God's power. Every time the arrogant chiefs looked out their windows and saw her, they felt small. She was a constant reminder that Salih was right and they were wrong. She was a threat to their authority. If the people respected the camel, they respected Salih. If they respected Salih, the chiefs lost their power. Hatred began to brew. It wasn't about water anymore, it was about politics. It was about ego. The women of the elite began to complain. "We can't access the water today because of that beast," they'd nag their husbands. "Are you going to let Salih's pet rule over us?" The tension in the city was palpable. You could cut it with a knife. The believers were drinking the milk, grateful. The disbelievers were sharpening their knives, hateful. The camel was here. She was real. She was huge. And she was a problem. Prophet Salih gave them a divine command. "This is God's she-camel," he told them. "Let her eat in God's land. Do not harm her, or a near punishment will seize you." He established a rule. The valley had one main source of water, a large well. Salih said, "One day the water is for the camel. She will drink it all. On that day you drink her milk, which she will provide in abundance. On the next day the water is for you and your livestock." Think about that. A massive creature that drinks an entire well dry in one day. But in exchange, she gave enough milk for thousands of people. For a while, this uneasy truce held. The camel roamed the streets. She grazed by their mountain palaces. When she walked, other animals moved out of the way. She was a living, breathing billboard for God's power. Every time the arrogant chiefs looked out their windows and saw her, they felt small. She was a constant reminder that Salih was right and they were wrong. She was a threat to their authority. If the people respected the camel, they respected Salih. If they respected Salih, the chiefs lost their power. Hatred began to brew. It wasn't about water anymore, it was about politics. It was about ego. The women of the elite began to complain. "We can't access the water today because of that beast," they'd nag their husbands. "Are you going to let Salih's pet rule over us?" The tension in the city was palpable. You could cut it with a knife. The believers were drinking the milk, grateful. The disbelievers were sharpening their knives, hateful. In the dark corners of the city, 9 men gathered. These were the heads of the most corrupt clans. The Quran calls them the 9 who caused corruption in the land. They hatched a plan. They couldn't just kill the camel. They needed someone crazy enough to do it. They needed a scapegoat who was also a villain. They found him. His name was Qudar ibn Salih. He was described as a red-faced, blue-eyed man wretched and rebellious, a man who feared nothing, neither man nor God. The chiefs offered him gold. They offered him women. They offered him glory. "Kill the beast," they whispered. "End this charade." Qudar agreed. It was a morning when the camel was coming to drink. She approached the trough, heavy and trusting. She was, after all, a sacred sign. She didn't fear humans. Qudar and his accomplice hid behind a rock. As the camel passed, the accomplice shot an arrow, hitting her in the leg. She stumbled. The earth seemed to hold its breath. Then, Qudar, with a sword in hand, rushed out. In a display of pure cruelty, he hamstrung her, slashing her tendons. The magnificent creature crashed to the ground. Did they stop there? No. They slaughtered her. And then, in a final act of utter depravity, they killed her foal that had fled up the mountain. The deed was done. The miracle was dead. The news spread like wildfire. The chiefs threw a banquet. They ate the meat of the camel. They celebrated. They high-fived each other. "We did it! We are free of Salih's magic." They marched to Salih's home, blood on their hands, laughing. "Oh Salih," they shouted, "we killed your camel. Bring us the punishment you promised. If you are a messenger, do it now." The sheer audacity. They were daring God to strike them down. Salih looked at the carcass of the sign of God. He looked at his people cheering over their crime. His heart broke. He didn't scream. He simply said, "Enjoy yourselves in your homes for 3 days. That is a promise not to be belied." 3 days. They laughed at him. 3 days? Why not now? They plotted to kill Salih that very night, thinking they could outsmart the prophecy. But God protected Salih. The assassins were crushed by falling rocks before they could reach him. Day 1. Thursday. The sun rose and the laughter stopped. The faces of the Thamud turned a sickly yellow. A strange dread filled the air. The birds stopped singing. The wind stopped blowing. They looked at each other and saw the color of fear. Day 2. Friday. Their faces turned deep red, like blood. Panic set in. The arrogance was gone, replaced by a terrifying realization. They weren't celebrating anymore. They were weeping. They were waiting. Day 3. Saturday. Their faces turned black, pitch black. Darkness engulfed the valley even at noon. They knew. They knew it was over. They dug their own graves. They went into their invincible stone houses, locked the heavy doors, and huddled together, waiting for the end. Sunday morning dawned. The sun rose over the horizon. The valley was silent. And then it came. It wasn't an army. It wasn't a flood. It wasn't fire. It was a sound. As Sayha. A single mighty blast from the heavens, combined with a violent convulsion from the earth beneath them. It was a sonic boom of divine proportion. It was so loud, so penetrating, that it didn't just break their eardrums, it severed their hearts inside their chests. In a fraction of a second, the mighty Thamud, the builders of mountains, the invincible warriors, dropped dead. They were found lying prostrate in their homes. No struggle, no escape. The stone walls they trusted to protect them became their tombs. The intricate carvings, the massive columns, they all stood firm, while the people inside were extinguished like a blown-out candle. Only Salih and the few believers, who had left the city before the blast, survived. Salih returned to the ruins one last time. He looked at the bodies of his people. He spoke to the dead, his voice heavy with grief. "O my people, I had certainly conveyed to you the message of my Lord and advised you, but you do not like advisors." And then he turned his back and walked away into the desert. Today, the wind still howls through Madain Salih. The structures are breathtakingly beautiful, a UNESCO World Heritage Site that draws tourists from around the globe. But when you look at those empty windows carved into the rock, remember the story of the people who carved them. They had everything: wealth, technology, power, and security. But they lacked the one thing that sustains a civilization: humility. They thought they could outbuild death. They thought they could challenge the divine and win. The story of the Thamud isn't just a history lesson, it's a mirror. In our modern world, with our skyscrapers reaching the clouds and our technology connecting the globe, do we feel invincible? Do we think we are untouchable? The stone giants of Thamud serve as a silent reminder. No matter how strong your walls are, if the foundation is built on arrogance, it will fall. Thank you for taking this journey into the past with me. If this story gave you chills, or if it made you look at history a little differently, hit that like button and share this with someone who loves a good mystery. And tell me in the comments, do you think humanity has learned this lesson, or are we repeating the mistakes of the Thamud? Until next time, stay curious, stay humble, and keep exploring.